Good evening, everyone. It's May 7th, 2025, and this is a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, Policy and Reform Subcommittee. And I'm going to pass it right over to one of the co-chairs, Tia, to get the meeting started.
Thank you so much, Tori. Thank you all for coming, and I'll start with introductions. My name is Tia Palafox. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a co-chair of tonight's meeting, the Policy and Reform Subcommittee. I've been a member since 2021. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it on to Kip.
Yeah, hi, Kip Silverman, the other co-chair. Co-chair means two, I guess, of the Policy and Reform Subcommittee, he, him pronouns. Like I mentioned earlier, I think I've been on PCCEP for about 1.5 years now. I'll pass it off to Conrad.
Thanks, Kip. I'm Conrad Hewlin. I graciously serve on PCCEP and this wonderful Policy and Reform Subcommittee, he, him pronouns. It's public record, but I just got engaged, so I have a fiance now. So that's a little bit better than what Kip mentioned earlier.
Mazel tov. That's great.
Thank you. I'll pass it off to Odelia.
My name is Odelia Zuckerman. I use she, her pronouns, co-chair of the full committee, and I am still single.
Right, we start adding our status.
There's a lot of that going around.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I am, but it was just a little joke. I don't see anyone else here from PCCEP right now, so I'm gonna pass it back to you all.
I don't either.
Okay.
We might have a small PCCEP group tonight. Okay. Let's go ahead and pass on to any members of the city like to introduce themselves.
I've been really quick. Hi, everybody. Stephanie Howard, she, her pronouns, and I work for the city in the public safety service area. And this has already been a very entertaining meeting. Thank you for the comic relief, everyone.
Yeah, I'm with you, Stephanie. I'm enjoying the energy so far. I'm Dory Gravinsky. I'm the PCCEP program manager. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Hey y'all, Elizabeth Perez, she, her pronouns. I am the Enterprise Services Director for the Public Safety Service Area for the City of Portland.
Thank you. And is there any members of the Portland Police Bureau would like to introduce themselves?
Sure. Good evening, Tia. Mary Claire Buckley, she, her, and I work at the Portland Police Bureau.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. And
one more. Amanda McMillan, Portland Police Bureau. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Tia, I'm just going to jump in. Christopher Taft, he, him pronouns, representing Mayor Wilson's office.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you both.
Yes. Sylvia?
Yeah. I'm on the TAC. So this is my first time to attend, and I just wanted to see what was going on. I work on the CQI recommendation. We've been working on that for 2 or 3 years now. So I've just dropped in to see what was going on. I'm really concerned about what's happening with Portland and what may be coming up, what we're going to be facing down the road with marches and protests, and are we going to be ready to deal with that, and are we going to get visitors from Washington, D.C. to help us out, which I don't want to see.
Thank
so
you
that's
so much.
That's my concern.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And anyone here from Independent Monitor Team like to introduce yourselves?
Hey Tia, thanks. Chet Amidas here. Hey everyone. That's Independent Monitoring Team, Associate Monitor. Hoping to be on camera soon, but it's fun traffic hour right now. So still driving, and yes, always some nice comic relief midweek on a Wednesday. So cheers to that.
We try to keep it pretty lighthearted in our work. I do want to acknowledge that we have Ethan Crow here from the ACLU, and we also have Jonathan, and Jonathan, I apologize, I'm sorry,
It is Chausovsky.
Chausovsky.
It's
Thank you.
Ukrainian. It sounds like Purina cat chow, Zov, like which is some sort of alien, and ski. It's actually not that bad. I'm a professor of political science at SUNY Fredonia, and I was asked to come and perhaps present, but I'm not sure I have anything to present. What I really need to do is observe.
Yeah.
So that I don't understand the background or circumstances, but I'm interested.
Yeah, so and I apologize, this was kind of a last minute thing. We did some scrambling to be able to find people to subject matter experts in constitutional law, politics, to help field questions about the executive order. And I don't think we had a chance to debrief you, so I appreciate you being here. And what we can do is talk a little bit about the structure of our committee as we get into the executive order conversation and why it's applicable to asking you and the ACLU here.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, I think we can move to our next couple slides.
Thank you. Our community agreements for our meetings are listen actively and respectfully, share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify.
And the last one that's kind of falling off the slide
can't
is call
see
out
anything else.
bias. Yeah, that's okay.
I can't, call out bias.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Today's overview is we'll do updates to start, and then a discussion on executive order and review of the draft letter that we have to the city officials. And then at the end, we'll have public comment time. The first update is we wanted to share the mayor's proposed budget that was released. And it was broken down here for you to see the numbers. Public Works, 4.73 billion. Community and Economic Development, 1.3 billion. City Operations, 1.02 billion. City Administrator's Office, including Portland Solutions, 847 million. Public Safety, 604 million. City Council, 21.1 million. Office of the City Auditor, 13.9 million. City of the Mayor, Office of the Mayor, 3.5 million.
And altogether, I think that's close to $8.5 billion.
Oh, thank you.
So it's the largest budget put forth to date for Portland.
Okay. What's at stake is fire, police, 911, violence prevention, and disaster planning are fundamental services that protect our community from harm. About 62% of Portlanders rate these among the most important services to support. Most residents in District 1, which spans East Portland, do not feel safe walking around their neighborhood at night. In your time of greatest need, you deserve a fast, capable response. What the budget proposes, strengthening Portland street response by adding 14 positions and expanding operating hours, capping overtime hours for first responders so they arrive rested and ready, supporting Portland ceasefire and Office of Violence Prevention, and fully funding our police oversight systems, investing $19.5 million to maintain fire, community health, assess and treat the chat teams, and law enforcement, and to enhance Portland street response.
You can go back really quick.
Okay.
Yeah, just some some highlights here. I think PCCEP has been keeping an eye on the Portland street response stuff for over a year. So that's something to take note of. And then also, I thought there was a line in here. There was a line included, maybe it's not on the slide here, about fully funding Portland's police oversight systems, including PCCEP. So that is something that's noteworthy as well.
I think,
Yeah.
okay. Yes, I remember seeing that.
Cool.
The next
Yeah, go ahead.
section is on, we always want to update you all on PPB directives, as we think that's important under policy and reform. Directives that are currently under the first review are death messages, how the city responds to the family and friends in time of death, and the second one is crime scene procedures. The comment period for the first universal review for those two directives ends on May 31st. And the directives under second universal review are foot pursuits, which closes on May 22nd, and duty to report potential exculpatory evidence, which ends on May 31st. I wanted to also add on the chat, I'm copying and pasting here. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
So as Tia is copying and pasting, I'll just note that the foot pursuit directive is one that has recently come up in some of PCCEP's discussions, because that one is relevant to the James Chassis case, and I believe was reviewed after that incident, and might be something that folks are interested in taking another look at now. And as Tia has shared in the chat, you are able to comment on them as a member of the public. Tia, if you want to.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, thank you. The foot pursuits ends on May 22nd, not May 31st. So I was putting that on here too. And to subscribe, you can go to the link I just put up, and that will put out a form where you can sign up and receive. Anytime the directives come up for review, you'll receive the information, but we'll try to keep you posted at each meeting. To write a public comment, you click on the link, read the directive, and then at the end of the page, there'll be a link that says provide feedback here. You click on that, and then you write your reply and what you would like to comment on as far as making changes, or you can say how you feel about the directive and so on. So that's how you do those two things, and wanted to update you on the reviews, and that's it for that section. Thank you. Oh, here's the part that was out of order. Oh no, this is the contact survey recommendation. Kip, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, for background, we made a recommendation last year. That's okay, no problem, Story. We made a recommendation I believe it was last year, and was accepted by Mayor Wheeler's office, and with PPB approval to move forward with a pilot for contact survey process for people who interact with our public safety system and the Portland Police Bureau. Budget for that was included in the current budget. Budget was included in the budget for the pilot. And the goals of it is to identify what we can improve and put into conversation about what is working, what is not working, and interactions with Portland Police and other first responders, I believe. And then again, from a PCCEP standpoint, this is really important because we also do community engagement and provide recommendations. And I would assume that some of the feedback from that would go through the public and community loop as well. The only question that we have is there seems to be some ambiguity, and I could be wrong, about where the recommendation or where the survey and the pilot would actually sit and who would manage it. And we were wondering if there was any specific data on that or intention. And Stephanie, I was about to call on you before you raised your hand. So
You can go to the next slide, Afrida.
oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry, never mind. I guess it's gone. Go ahead, Stephanie. Oh, there we go.
There it is.
Yeah, you bet. So no, so the pilot will still reside in the DCA's office, and that office, which is what replaced the Community Safety Division. So I think it will still live with our data team in the DCA's office. In other words, no change to the plan there, just names of the organization changed.
Okay. Okay, cool. That helps with the clarification on that. That's really helpful. Thank you. 2023. Yes. Thanks for the correction, Dory.
Yeah, and I think this will be an interesting one to follow, because this is one of the, since I've been here anyways, the first real material things that's come out of a recommendation. Some of the things have been more policy oriented, but this is so material that kind of the committee engaging with it being out in the real world. I think there's an appetite for that. So yeah, there's been some discussion about wanting more info as it's being rolled out. So Stephanie, maybe you could help us stay more connected to that and keep us up to date on what the status is and all of that.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And you know, it's in the procurement. They're reviewing a draft RFP that the work group, including PCCEP representatives, will look at before it's posted. So yes, we will keep you posted. And I do just want to acknowledge, I think Conrad's comment in the chat about, do we have confirmation that it will live in the DCA's office? I'm pretty sure that in the mayor's original response, he noted that that's where it would be. And I think he also acknowledged the change from Community Safety Division to DCA, but that may not have quite been on the radar at that point. But at any rate, I think, you know, there has been no change in the planning around any of that whatsoever.
cool. All right. Yeah, and I expect, you know, based on, as I just said, we'll want to keep in touch about as this rolls out and you know, yeah. Yeah, so we'll stay in touch with you about all that. Thanks, Stephanie. Any other questions from PCCEP members?
Is there a timeline connected to that? I don't remember what we've shared about that before, but just wanted an update.
Well, I wish I could say yes. What I will tell you is that it is a high priority for the mayor and for me. And we are working to expedite it through procurement review, and our BTS, the Bureau of Technology Services, also has to give feedback on that. And so I don't have a firm timeline, but I am really trying to expedite everything that I can.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. We're going to get into the meat of our first agenda item here. The last Monday, the 28th of April, President Trump's office released an executive order entitled Strengthening and Unleashing America's Law Enforcement to Pursue Criminals and Protect Innocent Citizens. And what I think we're going to try to do here, I'm sorry, I'm going to ignore the chat for the moment. The reason this is pertinent to this meeting, and this is some good background, Jonathan, also is, and yes, that is exactly how it was presented on the website as well, White House, that our committee exists, as well as previous incarnations, as part of a settlement agreement between the U.S. Department of Justice and the city of Portland that started in 2012 to help address inequity in outcomes of people in crisis and Portland Police Bureau, and also to help improve not only the outcomes, but look at how do we ensure policing is constitutional, equitable, and as part of the settlement agreement, also find alternative methods of engagement that can hopefully result in less undesirable outcomes, which is, I guess, the most politically correct way to kind of say that. So we have been under this settlement agreement. The city and the Portland Police Bureau have been working on this for nearly 13 years now. We have made substantial progress. The city's made substantial progress in compliance based on the articles of the settlement agreement. Last year, nearly half of them were moved into a self-monitoring mode. There were still over 50 left, one of them being use of force, still not being fully compliant or being out of compliance, depending on the different aspect of that article. And the very first, can we move to the next slide? Oh, okay. Well, we do have invited people, but can we, if I put the link in the chat, can we share I'd like to do a quick run through on what the actual, here I have the link in the chat to share with everyone. I'd like to go do a quick run through the different articles of this executive order, just so that we have a context for this. And again, for folks that are not familiar, our committee, Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, is one of the more unique aspects of one of these lawsuits, that we are mandated from the court to exist and provide a conduit between the communities of Portland and the city of Portland, the Portland Police Bureau, the U.S. Department of Justice, the amici, and the federal court as well. So we report out to Judge Simon on a periodic basis, who's overseeing the lawsuit, and we create recommendations and facilitate conversations. And we are kind of a hybrid committee as far as this goes in the United States, and it's been extremely successful. All parties involved have found value in this. So we're looking at the executive order right now. I do want to start by stating that executive orders are not laws. They are intended to give the departments under the management of the executive branch direction on how to implement laws, but they don't change anything in of themselves. However, we have seen over the last few months that executive orders are frequently being enacted and bypassing some due process and actual implementation that defies the separation of the branches of government. So very concerning to us as PCCEP and as citizens of Portland, and all the good work we have been able to accomplish over the years. This executive order addresses lawsuits and consent decrees. And Leslie, thank you for joining. Appreciate you being here.
If I can maybe to summarize a little bit, the first and foremost, the reason we're reviewing this order in this committee, or why it's top of mind, is because PCCEP is currently a part of one of these settlement agreements.
Right.
Though hopefully we will be an enduring remedy after the settlement is terminated, however that comes about. And part of this executive order does stipulate that within 60 days of the issuing, the DOJ can move to resolve or terminate or whatever all of these settlements or consent decrees around the country. So that's one of the reasons that PCCEP is interested in it, because the settlement agreement has been a huge part of our work for our entire existence.
Yeah.
There are also, as I think many people in this meeting are aware, many other things discussed in this order that are also of great interest to this committee as a committee that works on issues of constitutional policing. And so I think maybe what would be helpful is if we could engage with our guests and talk about the content of the order and questions people have. And
I was hoping that we could actually scroll down to the language of the settlement agreement part.
Yeah, we could start
so
there.
that we can review it. Then we should introduce our guests, of course, and then maybe we can start some conversation. So you can keep going down. Okay, right. Sorry, go up a little bit to section 3 it is. So I don't need to read to you all, but a lot of the language is odd and sometimes concerning, but after 7 there's a B. Okay, anyway, within 60 days of the date of this order, I'll read this one. The Attorney General shall review all ongoing federal consent decrees, out-of-court agreements, and post-judgment orders to which a state or local law enforcement agency is party, and modify, rescind, or move to conclude such measures that unduly impede the performance of law enforcement functions. It's, again, odd language. There's more language. We don't need to go scroll to find it. But that's 60 days to decide what to do. I think we could always argue that nothing we do unduly impedes law enforcement function, but that's a determination somebody else might make. But this is the part of this executive order, which is why we've asked ACLU and Jonathan from SUNY Fredonia, and apologize, I'm not going to attempt your last name again. I'm very bad at this. But to be able to hopefully discuss their understanding of what this executive order could portend and field questions from PCCEP and the community, of course. There are other aspects of it that are concerning, and maybe let's start with the settlement agreement part of it, and potentially we can talk about more if we feel like we want to dive into some other aspects. Does that seem like a good approach forward to everybody? Silence is golden, so that's good. I see some head nods too. Cool. Thank you. So where to start with this is we have a couple people from the independent monitor here, and at the end of the month, we'll be hosting the independent monitor to talk about their first report out on the settlement agreement and where we're at with that. And that'll open up further discussion. But I guess the top of mind on all of this is I guess we can start with Ethan and the Oregon ACLU of Oregon, based on what little time you guys have had to study this, and also how it dials into not only the executive order potential impacts, but also Oregon law and the fact that dismissal of a settlement agreement generally would have to come from the federal judge overseeing it, which would be Judge Michael Simon. But again, I'm unsure that those opinions are always being heard. So let's just start there, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having us. When Kip reached out to us last week, we were on our way to meetings with a number of officials, including an event hosted by Attorney General Rayfield in Bend. And our executive director and policy director mentioned, in all the busyness of the things that have happened over the last several months, we hadn't had the opportunity to analyze this executive order yet, or to receive any guidance from ACLU National. We're, of course, just one of 50 plus affiliates. That remains true, and as ironically came up in the beginning of the conversation with Kip, I've actually been quite under the weather for the last several days, so I haven't had a chance to put out some additional feelers. So we're going to be continuing to chase down more information and are eager to circle back with folks. I don't have a unique analysis from the ACLU of Oregon. I want to make sure we take down any questions that you all have to take back to our policy director and our legal director. And now that I'm sort of back in full working shape, we'll be pursuing a timely analysis from national as well as within our teams. I do really want to emphasize a really wise point that Kip made, that executive orders are not laws. One of the very first executive orders, which was nearly instantaneously met with litigation from our attorney general and other attorney generals, was the executive order around birthright citizenship. And I think that's a great example to use, in that so many of these executive orders are put out, they make a political point, and they're an opening salvo. And then whether it's a government official like our state attorney general, who we're in weekly contact with, whether it is the ACLU of Oregon, either in the affiliate or national, filing litigation, like Kip said, these are not laws. These are things that have at times been made with extreme haste. I don't know if you all saw headlines made by the Trump administration's lawsuit around congestion pricing, inadvertently including language that they themselves believed that their lawsuit wouldn't succeed, yet they were filing it anyway. So oftentimes these executive orders exist to serve a point, a political point, with them knowing full well that they aren't implementable. I'm not saying that's the case with this executive order. Again, we'll be eager to be back in contact with you all with analysis as soon as we have it. We're also in close contact with folks at the city of Portland. As soon as the new mayor was elected, he was in contact with our executive director, Sandy Chung, and they've spoken several times. We've been in regular contact with other folks in the city council. To the extent that is within the city's power, whatever could happen from an executive order like this, we're confident that we'd be able to be in communication with city leadership about what might come from that. I wish I could be more helpful at this time, but I think the most helpful thing I can do is listen to the questions you all have. Before we conclude this section, repeat back the questions as I understand them, to make sure that we understand what's on your all's mind and what's concerning you, so that we can come back with detailed answers as quickly as we're able.
No, I appreciate that. And Assistant Professor Chasovsky, did I get it?
Yeah, you almost got it. I'm going to call myself associate, though.
Oh, associate. I'm sorry. That
Not
was
that
the
it matters.
word.
That's okay.
It
Well, I'm
does.
not sure I have a whole lot more to say,
Okay.
but a few things that I can reiterate, a few things that you have said that were just said as well by the ACLU, because I think that that is right. What you have as a result of this order is 60 days to prepare for whatever the Attorney General decides to do
Mm.
regarding this specific case. I think you know that. Um, it is also a good idea to recognize that you will need to prepare for discovery and because you may well find um, bad faith arguments. They've had a lot of these. And your advantage, of course, is that you do have a federal judge overseeing this, which means that you have a place to go with authority to get a stay on any element that is over the top, that is not reasonable. What we hope is that they'll actually be reasonable, but Portland has a little bit of a history from what I've understood of being a flashpoint for certain things. And so there are folks who will want to make a flashpoint another flashpoint. That would, and so that's what I will say is, I believe your attorney general, our attorney general in New York, were working for nearly a year prior to the birthright citizenship and for some of the other orders that came out. They were ready to, when they got a Friday night order, they were ready to go to court on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in one sense, if you think strategically in those terms, what are the legal avenues that you have? And to also recognize that a lot of judges uh, over the past 3 months have become increasingly skeptical of the credibility of the Department of Justice. And so to be prepared to approach things, hopefully they take this case and they treat it in a reasonable, responsible way. If they don't, it's do your groundwork and prepare. An executive order, this executive order by itself doesn't necessarily mean very much, but it really is a warning shot. The Attorney General is going to go and start looking at these agreements and is going to try and resolve them in a way that may allow for more aggressive policing. I mean, that's really, I think, what they're going to try and do. And then the question is, where are the different places where we can slow that down? So that to make it responsible, so that, for example, when they say they're concerned about safety of people, you say, well, of course we are too. And so we're delighted to hear that, and et cetera. But look at where be prepared to try and find weaknesses in their arguments, to look and see what is going on in other places where there are also consent agreements of different sorts. They're going to not be the same as yours. So I think that's probably about as much as I can say at the moment. Again, an executive order, just so people understand, the Constitution sits at the top of our hierarchy. Below that, well, we have Article 1, and that is Congress, and Congress writes statutes. Article 2 is the executive branch. Within the executive branch, there are the agencies. Agencies write regulations, and those regulations must be consistent both with statutes of Congress, and they're authorized by Congress, and with the Constitution of the United States. Executive orders, in many instances, sit below a legitimately enacted agency order, and so it must be consistent with those orders. Very often, it's not superior to them. They can give guidance on how to interpret them, so not long as they're not inconsistent, and also must be consistent with the laws of Congress and the Constitution of the United States. Below all of that, right? So the executive orders are not at the top of the hierarchy. Below that is the courts. They must be consistent with everything above, but then they have a little kicker, which is that they also get to interpret it all. Constitution on down. So that's sort of the 101 civics lesson that I've been trying to make people be aware of, because the executive orders are sometimes making claims that they have absolutely no authority to do. This is an instance where it might, because it's an order to the Attorney General to dispense with justice within the normal range of what this agency does. That is why there's a degree of vulnerability.
I appreciate that distinction. Thank you. Oh, Delia, I see your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question for both of you, and I think like it's basically like who knows what is gonna happen at the administrative level, and like cities and states can do work to prepare and combat those things. And so does Portland have the power to do? What should the city be working to do to combat, like, not just the settlement agreement, but the executive order as a whole and the harm that that will cause and what that will do to change like how policing looks in Portland? Yeah.
I have one response to that. And the response is you may not be able to stop it if they really want to. Because I'm going to take this from the lens of democratic backsliding, which is a lot of what we're seeing, which is the intention of imposing authoritarianism. The police become a mechanism if they can capture that. So what the institutions that will allow, what we can do is resist it where we can legally, slow things down via the legal process, and B, educate the population, reach out and be really truly assertive in understanding that they understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that because it is that is going to make a difference in the long run, I believe. It's a mobilized populace, and it is going to be a battle.
I won't speak for the city. I think there's a number of folks with the city, and maybe they haven't had the opportunity to do any sort of scenario planning yet. It's only been about a week, and people have pulled in a lot of different directions. As I mentioned earlier, on a number of different pieces of litigation around executive orders, there have been times where attorneys general from different states have been the folks with the most appropriate standing to sue around an executive order. There have been times when the ACLU or an affiliate or a number of other organizations or individuals have been the folks best set to have the standing to be involved in litigation around an executive order. So unfortunately, and again, these are frustrating non-answers, I know. I don't know. I can't claim to know if the city would be the appropriate entity for litigation. But again, I won't speak for the city. There's a number of folks with the city that might speak to any scenario planning they've had a chance to do. And again, in sort of the hectic chaos that is intended as a knock-on effect of these executive orders, they might not have had time or capacity to do that scenario planning.
And before we go to Conrad, for anyone who didn't see the message in the chat, feel free to raise your hand and ask a question or make a comment at this time. It's open to anybody. Go ahead, Conrad.
Thank you. Really appreciate having you all here. I think the one question I have is when we're looking at formulating a response, is it worthwhile to also address it to the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Oregon, based off of the fact that I'm not really sure on the nuances of how executive orders work, but besides the fact that it's an acting U.S. Attorney, is that helpful for us to consider?
I think to Jonathan's wise point, I guess I would question what's the intended goal and audience of your response? Is your goal to, educate and inform the public, or is it a literal legal response? And unfortunately, I just can't speak to legal response because, again, the question of whom would have the standing for litigation if there were to be litigation, I just can't speak to that. I think likely there's a number of folks with the city that can talk to you about scenario planning and what, if any, responses are available to you.
Jonathan, did you want to add anything additionally to that?
You know, I don't know I can say very much about that other than I would first assess the person. And because I do know nothing about it. I don't know the normal procedures for the U.S. attorney. I know, of course, that U.S. attorneys serve at the pleasure of the president. That doesn't mean that all of them are loyalists. On the other hand, we have seen a large number of U.S. attorneys, both the assistant attorneys and et cetera, as well as U.S. attorneys, leave. The U.S. attorneys are normally replaced at the outset of a new administration. So that is common. But the assistant attorneys and et cetera, a lot of them have left under protest. So the question goes to the specific, I don't know anything about the specific person. I would want to know that.
Well, and I guess to add more, without consulting with experts and, folks with the city, I don't know that you all would be the folks even craft if the message would come from PCCEP, if that makes sense. Like, I think like even that's an assumption and we shouldn't be making any assumptions right now. Now, that's not to say, again, to Jonathan's wise point, that you all can't communicate with the public. That's a totally different matter.
All right. Kat?
Hi, thanks. Jonathan, I'm so glad you made it. This is awesome. So my question jumps off the back of Conrad's, where it was like, so yes, education, absolutely need to let folks know what's going on and also who PCCEP is, because there's still people out here who don't realize that you exist and all the good work you do, and exactly what do you do? So education, talking about the executive order, breaking it down into plain language for folks is very important. But my question is like, so in terms of gathering information, or at least having a proactive approach and not just waiting for the city to be like, oh, hey, the DOJ has now made a request to get rid of this consent decree, and we're just going to wait for Judge Simon to yay or nay it. What sort of information do you all believe that PCCEP should be going back through their archives to gather? It's like, should they start prepping just in case? Because I always believe in a proactive approach, not a reactive approach, and not relying on folks who are our electeds, because sometimes they only play to their best interests and not always to the interests of the community at large, or they forget some of the community. There's so many folks here who have been minoritized. There's so many folks who have been forgotten. And there are people right now who are on council who have also been harassed by police. So we cannot always trust that. And Ethan, you know that. You work for the ACLU. If you've not seen it, you're kind of new, but you haven't seen it all. But the thing is, it's like you talk to the folks on the street. There's not a lot of trust right now. So it's like, I would love for PCCEP to come out like ready, as opposed to scurrying on the 58th day, because as we all know, the city sometimes drags its feet or forgets something, or the mayor, like, I don't know, gets lost.
Ethan, Jonathan, do you all have any suggestions or any responses to?
My response is really simple. I agree. I think that's right. I think a scouring of your records and being prepared for, I know nothing about your case. I am not a lawyer, by the way. I'm a political scientist. They're different. But I would say preparing for what they might, imagine the range of things they might try to do. And it sounds like Kat put her finger on it, which is revoke it somehow. think through what are the different things they might do to it, and can be prepared for each as best you can.
Thanks so much for that, Kat, and I apologize to be a broken record of not full answers, not the full answers that you all deserve and that the community needs. And you're so right about the trust. You know, we've had the privilege to be out publicly being loud, supporting some of the elected officials who've felt that pressure from law enforcement. I'm seeing in the chat that there is a draft letter about continuing that work. I made sure to take down your question, Kat, and that's going to be on the list of questions that I'm going to be taking to our legal director when they're logging on in the morning. They're going to find a Slack from me first thing. So we'll make sure to circle back after deliberating with our team about that, Kat. So yeah, apologies not to be a broken record of non-answers right now, but I've got that as a question that we're going to circle back with you all on.
That's wonderful. We'll go ahead and go to Stephanie next, and Rochelle, I have you after Stephanie.
Thank you. I just wanted to just say, you know, I don't speak for the whole city, but I'm here as a city representative from the public safety service area. And I know Christopher Taft is here also from the mayor's office, as you know. And I guess I just really wanted to proactively say a few things. Number one, I'm really, really glad that you're joining us, Ethan and Jonathan. I'm really, really appreciating your feedback. And I think you are highlighting the complicated nature of all of the things that are going on right now, and where we're, you know, the many things that we're all trying to wrap our arms around and strategize on how to defend against, and, you know, how to ensure that our values are not consumed or forced up, you know, that what we are doing is consistent with Portland's values. So all of that just to say thank you. And the city's absolutely trying to figure out what our options are. And I know that the mayor and the city attorney's office have meetings. We have some electeds here who I'm sure this is a very high priority item for them as well. And so I just wanted to make sure everyone here knows that, you know, there's a lot of work happening to try to figure out what that strategy can be. And I think PCCEP is the kind of the perfect venue for those conversations as we learn more and as we, you know, develop ideas around what that looks like. So I just wanted to make sure that that's said by somebody at the city, and I don't want anyone in this group to, you know, leave feeling like the city is just gonna sit around and wait for something. We know this is important. The settlement agreement reflects, you know, over a decade of work and achievement. And as you heard, you know, from lots of people over the years, and especially, you know, you heard from even folks at PBB that good things have come from this settlement agreement. It has changed things in our city and in our police bureau for the better. And so I just want you all to know that it is the goals of the settlement agreement. I do not think are something that go away for the city, regardless of what an executive order says.
Yeah, I'm going to speak totally out of turn. I apologize for not following the order. Just to piggyback off of what Stephanie was just saying, the goals of the settlement agreement remain important to the mayor and for all Portlanders, obviously. And like Stephanie said, we have more questions and answers. And we have a meeting on the books as early as Monday at noon to begin discussions. So this is just wanted to add that color to what Stephanie said.
All right. Rochelle?
Yes, my name is Rochelle Silver. I am a member of the Mental Health Alliance, which is one of the amicus groups involved in this case. I am not speaking for them tonight, though. I'm just speaking for myself. And I need to say also that I'm not a lawyer, but I have been involved in this case for its entirety for the last 13 years. I was a member of the COAB, the predecessor of the PCCEP. And after that ended, I became a member of the Mental Health Alliance. My understanding is this case is not a consent decree. It's a totally different legal entity called a settlement agreement. So the federal government can end consent decrees if they choose, and there can be some legal fighting about it. But the only person who can end the settlement agreement, as I understand it, is Judge Simon. So my guess is what might happen is that Judge Simon will call everybody together after the Attorney General removes the DOJ attorneys from the case, and there is no DOJ in the case anymore. And she has a right to run her department any way she chooses. So if the DOJ is removed from the case, then Judge Simon would want to know from the city and from PPB whether they want to continue it. And I think that's the question that you need to look into, is what is the city wanting to do? This case has been very expensive for the city. We have an independent monitor that costs a lot of money, and there are other things involved in the settlement agreement that cost money. If the city and the PPB together say to the judge, Judge, we think we're doing fine. Look at all the things we've accomplished. We can do all of this with self-monitoring. We really don't need any settlement agreement. I'm not sure, but what the judge would say, okay, let's do that. And I don't know that the voice of PCCEP or the voice of the community in any way would have sufficient loudness to stop it. But if I were you, if I were a member of the PCCEP, and if you think that your job is important, and if you think you've done a good job and want to continue doing it, I would work like hell to get yourself codified, because that's the way you're going to exist, regardless of whether the settlement agreement exists or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kip.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And yeah, first of all, I really appreciate the entire conversation with everybody showing up, and the substance of it being complicated and amorphous, but having a very frank conversation about it. I really appreciate it. That's not why I had my hand up. Reason I had my hand up was to talk about the fact that yes, like I mentioned earlier, Judge Simon theoretically is the only person who would be able to say, we'll dismiss this, you're in compliance, you've met all the requirements of it. We do get to present along with the PPB and the independent monitor and the DOJ, if they are representing this case along with amici, to Judge Simon periodically. I think the next one is coming up in July. I believe it's July. So as far as how we engage, we're clearly not amici or plaintiffs. We are facilitators of the conversation between the city, the different parties, and of course the Portland community at large. So the next thing we will be discussing after this part of the conversation is we've drafted a letter for consideration for the full committee, full PCCEP team, to ask city leadership and the PPB and the city attorney's office to continue the work regardless of what comes down from the Department of Justice and other means going forward. So we will be speaking to that shortly. I was going to say, on top of that, the fact that we do, as a city and a community, need to kind of coalesce around this, because the other aspects of the executive order, which we don't have time to go into today, and I don't know that this venue is the totally appropriate one, have other implications that are challenging for the work that has been accomplished over the last 13 years. So I appreciate the input from everybody about advice on doing the groundwork as soon as possible in a thoughtful, meaningful way, and be prepared for whatever might come next. So thank you for all of those inputs. I really appreciate it.
Cordelia?
Yeah, Counselor Canal can go before me.
Counselor Canal?
Hi, yeah. Thanks everybody for having this conversation. Good to be back at PCCEP. I just wanted to say I'm really grateful. I knew this already, but glad to hear the mayor's office has an interest in this and is willing to say that. I know that my guess is at least 4 council offices have an interest in this too, and have kind of started to think about different parts of this. It's probably more than that. But I can't speak 100% with certainty. I think while I certainly can't speak for everyone, colleagues, or the mayor's office, I think there is an interest broadly in avoiding shocks to the system, of having anything happen abruptly. And that's really vital to ensuring that community members can expect that there's the same thing, or that there is a evolution or a change, but not whiplash in terms of what the requirements are. So I do think that's a baseline. Beyond that is a conversation that just hasn't happened yet. I am also co-chair of the Community and Public Safety Committee. We do have some time in a meeting coming up that is sort of soft earmarked for it, and for this kind of a conversation, because it's really vital that we do have time for at least the subset of council members that are on that committee to start talking about, you know, this was on this was soft penciled in even earlier than the executive order. The idea that there needed to be a conversation around codification of PCCEP and other potential federal implications. I can't remember who said it. I think it was Kat earlier, that this is a known thing. It was a proactive conversation in theory that could have happened. Now it's not proactive. It's reactive to a potential change. So there is that. The other thing I'll just mention is my understanding, and I think those who've been in the court room more often than I have can answer this better than I can, but that eventually, if there is a motion to dismiss, there would be, my understanding is, a fairness hearing where the threshold would be whether the motion is considered fair, adequate, and reasonable. I think that's what it would take for the judge to do, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I see Stephanie being thoughtful.
It's our agreement is so unique that it makes it very complicated, which is part of the reason why it's so hard to answer questions. But I agree. I think there would be some kind of hearing. I don't know if it would be a fairness hearing or what the standard would be. That's part of what we're trying to understand.
Yeah, so thank you. So at some point there'd be an opportunity, and I think Kip's right, that PCCEP would be, as per usual, the first community voice to testify on it. So if you had a position that was shared by the group, or even just empowered your co-chairs to go share, that would be something that would be heard. And I also would encourage you to when we do have the conversations at council, to come talk there. And we'll certainly be inviting in the mayor's office to that conversation as well, because it's really vital that we have the community voice as part of this process. And as it relates to the settlement agreement, PCCEP is the obvious place, as Stephanie put it. So I agree with that. Thanks.
Counselor, go ahead, Adelia.
Yeah. just a few things and a few questions. Like I do appreciate hearing from the city this like support, and I've also heard time and time again from different people that they're ready for the settlement agreement to end because there's a lot of work that it puts on the city and things like that, and I just don't um want that for this to be the place where we compromise, and I know that um it gives a good excuse to the city, like, oh, well, Trump did it, what can we do? But again, like, it's not fair, for all the work that went into this. And yeah, just something like I feel strongly about. And I know that like it does put more work on the city and PPB in different ways and the city attorney's office. Like, and there's good reason behind it, you know? And then I also just wanted to kind of go back to the executive order. I think like when we talk about protests at PCEP, we often ask the question of if people are policed differently, specifically like ideological differences. And I know that those ideological differences align with Trump's, right? And so like going back to the executive order, how do you think I'm curious from Ethan, and Jonathan, it just like the impacts this will have on like those protests of like more left folks and like how the impacts will differ and what our city can do with that, even if things are still unknown.
Gotcha. Well, without providing a full analysis of the executive order, which again, we're in the process of, I can say there are just irrefutably in there, uses of, in a pejorative way, phrases like equity, these things are directly in the text of the executive order. There's not really any ambiguity about that. Regarding protests, I guess, can you say more? I'm trying to understand how that connects with this and make sure I'm fully following.
Yeah, totally. And the question isn't just about protests. I think
I
it's
see.
just like
Yeah.
in the context of PCEP, we speak to it, specifically around like protests, like around like Palestine or Black Lives Matter
Interesting. Yeah.
protests versus like Proud Boy events, and like assessing those differences.
Yeah.
But I think this speaks to things more generally,
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think the administration's been unambiguous, particularly in their threats around attacks on federal funding. We saw just several weeks ago, before there ultimately ended up being litigation once again, their threats to take away federal funding from school districts based on school districts funding critical programs that they politically disagreed with. And our governor, strongly rejected defunding programs that have been put in place, funded by the legislature, and aligned with Oregon values. So I think their willingness, whether it's threatening funding or taking other actions to push their political agenda, yeah, I think that's unambiguous. That they're clearly on the record as willing to do that.
What I would add to that is absolutely, this is working its way through the courts. We will see what the courts do, because this is an instance where very often the president is acting in ways that that I think are patently illegal. I suspect ACLU will largely agree with that they are, a lot of what is going on in defunding is deeply problematic. If and if they want to defund something, fine, go to Congress and have them write a new budget for the next year where you X those things out. And I will be appalled at many of those, but that's constitutional. What a lot of what you're describing is retribution using levers in a way that is illegitimate. Unfortunately, the executive is the executive. We do not have a parliamentary system. We have separation of powers, and he is quite willing to ignore norms and instead act contrary to, law, quite frankly. And I think it's often quite clear. The question will be, how far will the courts allow that to go? I suspect that when it comes to cultural issues, they will support the culture. That, for example, the order they had that they allowed the stay on trans to so that the government could in the military could try to ban trans in the military. On a cultural issue like that, they'll go with the courts. The Supreme Court at least will go with that. On other areas, I'm not so sure at all. And we are going to find out. I think in the larger context, an unpopular president will stiffen the backbone of the court.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, we're almost at time. I do want to make sure that all questions are answered. I know it's late on the East Coast, late-ish, but there are. I was slightly distracted because I was rereading some of the executive order, and it looks like the language might have changed since I last read through the whole thing, which was confusing me. But there were some I could be wrong on that. There might be some, there are other aspects that we'll probably want to bring back into these meetings to discuss because there are impacts, especially around constitutional policing and protesting and interactions that have greatly improved over the last 4 years, but were previous of serious concern as well. So I just want to put a pin in that we'll want to come back towards that. So are there any other questions?
There's a question in the chat. Kim,
Oh,
post
of order. Yeah, let me grab that.
There we go.
I just put it in, Kip.
Okay, thank you.
So, and we are on time as far as the agenda is concerned. So if you'd like to move on, that's a possibility right now too.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not missing any questions. So
I'll add a question that Kat asked in the chat just about like police accountability. I don't know if y'all can speak to that as well, but that's already something that's hard. So yeah, how might this affect that? What can be done, etc.? Anything? Any thoughts on that aspect of things?
That's definitely something we'd be looking at in a full analysis and we'll come back to you.
yeah.
Okay.
And to that question, Kat, I did get some guidance. I've had multiple conversations over the last week. It's kind of mind-boggling, but that a good chunk of what's in this executive order already exists. It's just kind of making some of the points more hyperbolic, maybe. But that is one of the things that somebody, or actually I think two different professors had pointed out to me, is like this already exists, right? That the maximum resources available to police for representing them through multiple different means already exists. So they're not even sure why it's in there other than pandering, I think was the term I heard.
Oh yeah, sure. If I can just throw in
Yeah.
a quick comment. I know there's an agenda. I don't like going over agendas. I'm a stickler, but one of the things that stuck out to me is that this EO strengthens these things, which also could strengthen qualified immunity, making it harder in the
Right.
future. And, you know, when Odelia was speaking, talking about different protests, the thing about accountability comes up there too, because yes, there are, honestly, it feels like there's two Portlands sometimes when you go out to protest. You know, you'll see how they react to when there was 2020 and there were a number of BLM ones. And then you saw when back in 2018, when Proud Boys and other groups were coming here and the cops would form a wall around them and face folks who were protesting hate. So that does happen. My concern though is, and this is what happened with the case of index papers versus the Portland Police, is that when Biden became president, the DOJ or Homeland Security went to Simon and said, hey, we're the good guys now. Biden's president. It'll never happen again. You won't have Operation Diligent Valor come into Portland. You're not going to get blown up. National Guard won't come through the way they did. So let's drop our side. And Simon said, okie dokie. And they did. So it was like, oh, yeah, they're the good guys now. So when Portland Police does one day get into compliance, because good Lord, they have to eventually, right? Will they then go to Judge Simon and say, hey, we don't need PCCEP now. We're the good guys. We met all our requirements. We're totally fine. We're not racist. We're not prejudiced. We're not beating the crap out of people. We're not blowing people up with flashbangs and giving them concussions. We don't need PCCEP. So, I mean, the thing about codification or whatever procedure you have to do sounds like an amazing idea to explore. The question is like, what green lights do you need?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as green lights, we need the support of our electeds, essentially. Yeah.
And
Okay,
Jonathan,
cool.
did you want to say anything on the accountability question that was asked? Here's not.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Oh, Councilor Samir.
Just
Councilor Cannell.
It's fine, Kip.
It's been a long day.
So just to kind of, we do have I don't, it's hard, you can't have a green light before there's a proposal, right? So, because that's the vote, basically. But in terms of exploring it, I know there's interest in at least exploring it from the co-chairs of the committee. And that's where it starts. So on the codification side, just wanted to kind of be more explicit than I was before about that. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate that. And speaking of, the next part of this is we've drafted a letter for continuity, a commitment to continuing this work that we wanted to review in this meeting, get input from PCCEP and the community, and see if we can move this forward to discussion in a full committee meeting. So with that, should I share the link? Or do you have the link?
Sure. We can share it or you can share it.
Well, if you could share it, that way I can just read as you guys scroll and hopefully somebody can take notes.
Yes, I think that will take us just a second to.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the full name and title to you.
Kip, I think it would probably be fastest actually if you just directly shared that
Okay.
with Afrida or shared it because she doesn't have access.
Oh, okay. I can share. Let me turn off comments because I don't know that is useful right now. Okay, and let me make sure of the latest version. Okay, Outlook is fighting with me, but I can share. Okay, cool. Let me close out notes. Yep, all right. This should work. hopefully. No,
Yeah, it's good.
Is that just the document?
Yes.
It's your entire
That's
browser
what I
window.
thought. It shouldn't be. Hold on a
Oh.
second. No, sorry about that. Application window. Here we go. Nope, it's doing it again, isn't it?
It's
All right,
okay.
let's try it one more time.
Well, Kip, when you show it, even in that browser link,
Is it
it's
viewable?
visible. It's viewable.
Yeah.
To
Oh,
enlarge.
okay.
Yeah, it's viewable.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just zoom in and we're all good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that then. Okay, let me try zooming in. How's that?
Great.
Yeah.
Let me put some focus by closing windows.
We don't see any other windows.
Oh, okay. So you
Yeah.
see the document. Okay.
Yeah, maybe zoom in just a little more.
That's so weird. It's not okay. Never mind. I work in IT and most meetings start with we should get an IT guy in here. Okay. Anyway, so we have drafted a letter that we want to review based on the executive order and all the moving parts that could affect the work that we have been doing, recognizing there's still a lot more going on. But the thing we want to focus on is a commitment to asking, as you can see, Mayor Wilson, Chief Day, Portland City Council. We can add more people if we think we need the city attorney. But given all the different moving pieces on this, we feel that there are two things that are really important. So the way that we're phrasing this, we linked, of course, to the executive order. But we want to make sure that regardless of the outcomes of the executive order and other work that or other aspects going on, that Portland's leadership commit to honoring the hard work and progress made over the years to address the issues raised in U.S. Department of Justice versus City of Portland, and commit to completing the work of the settlement agreement and continue supporting the efforts of PCCEP. And it should say something to beyond that. We have made tremendous progress in the past several years, as recognized by the independent monitor team, Judge Simon, the city attorney's office, and Chief Day, as well as PPV leadership. And as Dr. Thomas Christoph had stated in his last presentation to Judge Simon, settling the lawsuit and moving forward is the floor of all this work. Not finishing the work would be a huge break in the trust and goodwill between the city and Portland's communities and residents, and negate the exhaustive work all of us have put into this effort to ensure equitable policing and the best possible outcomes and safety for everyone. And thankfully, people can read and they don't have to say that out loud, because that requires a very deep breath. But what we want to ensure going forward are two things, whether it's related to the settlement agreement, the executive order, or otherwise, is that we finish the work of the settlement agreement and continue reporting to independent monitor, the amici, and PCCEP, as has been the practice previously. And we asked Mayor Wilson and the Community and Public Safety, this is to commit to engaging with all of City Council and or make space for PCCEP to present the history and settlement agreement, as well as the work we've put in to this, so there's proper education, conversation, and debate to discuss how Portland should move forward to complete the work and continue to have community input and accountability in years to come. And then the city's commitment to enact equitable and constitutional policing has been the cornerstone of addressing concerns of trust and accountability by the Portland public, and righting wrongs from past outcomes of inequitable interactions between Portland police and people in crisis. Losing momentum and the ability to connect to the community in a thoughtful and meaningful way through PCEP and other means would be a tremendous loss for all. Thank you for urgent consideration regarding this matter. And reading it out loud, I can see there's still some wordsmithing to be done, but would love to facilitate thoughts on this and input.
Comments or questions around this, please go ahead and raise your virtual hand.
I'll raise my hand to start with that there could be some clarity in the wording of this. So, but I think the core content is pretty close to what it needs to be. I do want to clarify that it's not just about getting to the end of the settlement agreement, but also beyond in like Dr. Christoph said, getting to the end of the settlement agreement is the floor of the work, and there's still a lot more to be done. And I think some of that language got dropped from a previous incarnation. So.
Yeah, there's a question and a comment from Kayla. Kayla, I would invite you to come off mute if you're able to and share your question to the space.
Yeah, hello, good evening. I just wanted to know or ask if you will be looking to secure funding for PCEP.
The mayor's proposed budget came out, I think this Monday, and PCEP is in it and funded to the level that we requested, and to the level that we were under Mayor Wheeler, give or take an inconsequential amount. And his proposal also did include, I will note, a community engagement position that we have been requesting for many years. So that is encouraging. And my expectation would be that codification would essentially mean that the city is committing to an appropriate budget and level of funding, moving forward.
Yeah.
My question is around number one, if we ask the following, the city of Portland and PPB commit to finishing the work, and it says that they would be reporting to the independent monitor, Amici and PCEP, our committee, and I'm wondering, I just felt confused for a minute. Is the PPB and city of Portland reporting to us as in the annual reports? What are they? I can't remember what they are reporting to us. And we're not, I was thinking PCEP more reports to them. What
Maybe it should be reporting and engaging with.
Okay, thank you.
No.
And the other thing I had around that is, should we add that we want to continue as a committee even when the settlement agreement is completed? As we've talked about that before.
Yeah, so, and have community input and accountability in years to come, so.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Conrad.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, while we may need just a little fine tuning, I hope everyone who's on the call hears that. I mean, I think the intent and the work is right, is to come out, right, single page, strong statement that isn't aggressive, but is very, very clear of like, here's where we are, here's where we should be going as a city, as a community. And I think if we have that as the foundation, we're making the right kind of statement moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I appreciate your input on this earlier also, Conrad and Odelia, so thank you.
Go ahead, Odelia.
Yeah, thank you. I guess feel like I'm kind of confused on what we're asking for. I feel like we can be more clear and concise. I mean, it's weird how much PCEP is tied into the settlement agreement, but we're also asking for these things to exist beyond that. And so I think, but also like, this isn't how we ask for codification, right? It has to be like a vote and all of those things, council. So I guess I'm just feeling confused on how that fits together and how we should engage with codification, because it's like not explicitly mentioned here and we're asking for PCEP to exist beyond right now. So I guess that's where I'm feeling a little lost.
I think the intention of not being too prescriptive to an end result, but I agree with that. That codification, well, not I agree with that. Codification would be necessary to get beyond the end of the settlement agreement, right? Which, if all items come under compliance, they would go into self-monitoring for a year. So there would, once that is, yay, my ad block's been updated. So
Oh no.
that's great. Anyway, so the whole point being that that codification is going to be a critical step for ongoing support, funding, and engagement and evolution of the work that we do, right? This letter is not being prescriptive that codification needs to happen immediately, or should be, rushed through, but instead that we're entering a time of weirdness and uncertainty. And I didn't put weirdness in here, but I'm adding a flourish right now. But we're entering a time when we don't know what the next few months are going to look like. So we would like a commitment from the city to say, we're going to keep moving forward with this process regardless. And that's really what the ask is. And then hopefully you'll have the ability to do some of the education, have the important conversations around the work that we've done, the history of the success and meaningfulness of the work, and possibly bring the codification effort back around to an actual ask.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make a little more sense?
Dory, were you gonna hop in?
Well, yeah, maybe. And so I think maybe we do all need to get a little more clear on the purpose of the letter. I did discuss this with Kip, and of course, codification is absolutely a core goal. PCEP has been discussing it for years. The public is very supportive and, discusses it in many meetings. I think the original intent of this letter was kind of to get something done quickly within this 60-day window, asking for essentially a statement of commitment, and also to demonstrate PCEP's, where you all stand on these subjects. And so it didn't feel quite right to, one of the things we discussed was the short timeline and the political constraints around getting PCEP codified in that window, like acknowledging, we're in this budget year or budget window where they're getting that finalized, and that's very challenging. And, so is there a way to kind of express that desire and ask for that commitment without saying it has to be in this window? And, it's kind of weird because we don't really write letters that much. And so like, what is this thing? So maybe I confused that all more, but yeah, I think the point being we should get clear on what the intent of this is and then what the requests are. Because all we can really ask from a letter basically is like a statement of support or commitment or whatever, which is a little different than one of our recommendations. I think that's my
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Okay, that's super helpful for me to understand.
Yeah, and it's why it's not in a, well, I see the title is recommendation. It's the wrong word because it's also not in the recommendation format that we use.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
That's it. And I take accountability for this because I had said we might not want to be super prescriptive, like you must commit to these things before the 60 days. So I did say that. But that said, I think you could still absolutely include language about codification, and you could all work that out. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think like even like a commitment to codification, essentially. And maybe making that like a separate point just so it flows more, makes more sense. And then the other, like just a small thing in terms of PCEP presenting the history settlement of the settlement agreement to council. I think that would be great if it came from like AMAC and the MHA. I don't know. I don't want to make this more difficult and like adding other groups to this, but I think that they would be
Yeah,
best to do
I
that
would,
training.
yeah, I would kind of argue that that would be part of that, right? Is
Okay,
that
for sure.
they are kind of like our guiding light to making sure we're on track with things anyway. So that would be part of the process potentially. But we could break this into we ask the following, we can make it clearer. We can break it maybe into 3 different pieces. Let's finish the works, whatever that looks like. That we have a commitment to engaging to make sure everybody understands what has transpired, why this exists, and why this is important, and hopefully bring this around in the future when there's time to spend cycles on it to look at how do we exist going forward, whether, if that's codification or what have you. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So let me just ask, so PCEP members that are here, because I think this will likely be something that gets worked on offline, and also members of the public, is PCEP on the right track? What else would you like to see? Obviously all the wordsmithing, of course, but yeah, especially members of the public and any PCEP members who haven't shared. Are we on the right track? Do you have additional feedback for the subcommittee as they work on this, given the time crunch offline?
Mm-hmm.
For that.
Hey, Kyle. Thank you.
We'll see you, Kyle. Any comments on this?
I have a question if folks from, I know it's always awkward when we do this with like people from the city here and we're giving it to you guys potentially, but I was just wondering if you could speak to it now, thoughts, advice, framing, things like that. Or like if you're super down with it and you're like, yeah, keep doing it.
I'll just say I think you all know I'm always down with PCEP making a clear request and stating a position, and you've already received support for the codification, and so I totally think that is the right thing. I think you're right to separate the two, like saying, hey, this is one mechanism and we want to continue to have more conversation about what this looks like going forward in a larger sense. So no, I don't have any suggestions. I think you're doing great.
That's a good note. What this could look like, yeah, how it could evolve beyond the settlement agreement. That might be a good note to add to this that we have not reflected.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Christopher,
Charlie.
oh,
Sorry, I was gonna call him Charlie.
yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I was just wanting to point out there seem to be several comments in the chat in regards to your question of like, are you guys down for this? And also, I really appreciate whoever brought up the history part. I think the history of this settlement is going to be very, very important to how, what's a good word to use to describe the extreme importance of this settlement. To me, it doesn't go far enough, but you know, yeah, just thank you for that, whoever said that. But yeah, you might want to read the chat. There seems to be a few comments in there.
Yeah, we'll go back through it and incorporate it into the next revision of this. One of the, like Counselor Canal mentioned, there's so many things going on, and while the folks that are here week after week, and thank you for that, understand a lot of this, it was clear in some previous working sessions that not everybody's fully aware of what we do and the history of all of this. So I do think there needs to be some conversation, education, and like has been suggested, talk about the absolute path forward to positive impacts that have happened because of this organization or this committee and the previous incarnations of it towards more equitable policing. And that story needs to get told before I think we could just charge forward and ask for, yes, please codify us. So that's why the language is, let's make sure we have the ability to speak to and educate everybody so that everybody's making a fully informed decision on it. Okay, cool. I think that gives us just enough time for some open comment. If there's nothing else to discuss on this, I really appreciate everybody's input again and frank conversations about it all.
Yeah, one thing I think like we should discuss a timeline for this and what next steps look like, because the full committee meeting this month will be the independent monitor town hall on the 28th. So yeah, like logistically, Dory, did you have any thoughts on how this could move forward?
I think that because it's a letter, you all are free to work on it offline as a group, and you know, come to a consensus in that way. It is not a formal recommendation.
Okay, cool. I was
so you
going
can
to ask
do it,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, asynchronously. So yes, because our full committee meeting this month is the independent monitor town hall on the 28th.
Cool. Okay. What do you think like our goal should be for getting this sent in? Anyone, Kip, do you have thoughts on like
Oh, timeline?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, once again, I'm going to call Counselor Canal's schedule here. When can people actually focus on it if we sent it out to everybody? Let's say 2 weeks. A week to, by next week, we should be able to have an updated draft and discuss. And hopefully by the 21st, we can send it out to everybody. If we can get PCCEP to, if we have a quorum of committee members saying this is good to go. I don't want to dawdle on it. I think
Yeah.
there's so much else that we're going to have to be working on.
Yeah, I agree. Cool.
Okay, I think, yes, so we had this slide up, but we're gonna now move into open public comment. So if you have any other comments or questions that you'd like to share that are not related to the agenda of this meeting, feel free to raise your hand at this time. It can also be anything related to something we did discuss in the meeting.
Go ahead, Odelia.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to respond to Barbara's comment about the city investigating PPP's behavior during that time between the COCL and the independent monitor. So is anyone from the city? Is Sarah Ames here? I didn't see her. No. Okay. I'm gonna try to explain her email. But essentially, like, the city and the DOJ agreed to that time not being investigated, and so from what we've heard from the city attorneys, it seems like that wouldn't be something where we can request for the monitor to go back and investigate that time. Because the city agreed to it and the contract was before or like after that time, and it's a concern for me because that's when there were a lot of protests and a lot of police activity at PSU, and so that's what we've heard from Sarah Ames. And so if there were to be an investigation, it wouldn't be from the monitor, and it would just have to be like PCCEP could look into things or things like that, but it wouldn't be formal. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to add to that or a way to explain that better than I can.
Yeah, I know that we did have, and I don't recall, I think it might have been community engagement last year, which we did talk about some of the actions that happened. So I think that there, Dan Handelman and others at Copwatch have brought this up frequently. Thank you, Barb, that the period that was not being monitored was out of compliance. So I think it's not unreasonable to consider what we would want to get out of looking into it and revisiting what happened, and creating a report or a recommendation from it. So I think it makes sense, but we would need to kind of workshop what we're trying to accomplish with that.
I will also add, City Attorney Sarah Ames did suggest that because that period was not included in a monitoring report, one of the suggestions was that, of course, PCCEP could review any complaints made through the formal complaint system during that time, which is IPR. Or do a public records request of the PPB for anything you might find from that time period, especially if the protests are top of mind. So there are some avenues you could go down if you wanted to dig into that information more. Obviously, that doesn't speak to the exact question and problem, which is that period was not actively monitored through the lens of the settlement agreement, but there are some things you could pursue if there was interest.
I'll have to go back and take a look at that. I must have missed some of that, but yeah. So maybe it's something from either policy or community engagement that we can discuss in future meetings about whether we want to pursue that or not.
Barbara?
If you did that, could you then bring it up in the court when you do your report? That it was out of compliance, that behavior?
Well, the not monitoring was out of compliance, and I think we've acknowledged that.
Okay.
If we do find that, I don't know that our committee has the ability to say this is in compliance or out of compliance. We can take a just factual, what complaints happened, what transpired. I know from the previous meeting, which I think was about a year ago, so I'm going off memory, that there was some confusion about who was responsible for what, whether it was PSU, police, and some members of PPB, and there is some unclarity, that's not a word, but there were some unclear things about what had transpired. So I think being able to unpack that could be worthwhile.
Thank you.
Oh. Is that correct, Dory? Okay, I was not aware of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what
That's what Odelia, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
That's what's in the writing I just put in the chat and what
Oh, I didn't
that's what we
see
heard
those.
from the city attorney's office. So
Okay.
it was agreed upon, essentially.
Okay.
Conrad?
Thank you. Yeah, just so it's part of public record, right, because I was on campus during the time period mentioned. I just want to make sure I think we should talk about it to the rest of the committee. I think I've made it clear to the rest of the committee where I stand, which is that if it's focused, if there's a specific allegation or something that's flagged, I think we need to investigate it. But again, this is just my personal bias, I will acknowledge, is that I did not see, witness, or hear things that give me pause in a very tumultuous time. That's not to say it doesn't exist, but I think if we want to open that up, we need to have it focused on what specifically needs to be examined or look at for further recommendation.
Yeah, totally. And I think I get like where you're coming from and from your perspective. And I think like I have witnessed and seen violence on campus that I take issue with, and that was like misuse and excessive use of force. While I wasn't a student, I protest sometimes. And yeah, but anyways, we had a meeting, I think Kip was referring to it, that where some folks who were at those protests came and spoke to specific harm they experienced at the hands of PPB and shared their stories. And so I think if I'll try to find that meeting, it's got to be on our website and YouTube and stuff. But that kind of points to those specific stories, and I haven't seen that come back yet. But I totally agree that like we can't just do this for no reason, especially with everything happening right now. So yeah. Dory, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I will just say, just to kind of anchor this discussion, what we're talking about is the settlement agreement monitoring process. And that is constrained essentially by the information that exists in the system, right? So what the monitor does, or what the COCL did, was they look at stuff like reports to the existing accountability system, or internal affairs or whatever it is, right? It's stuff that it's information that is reported by and to PPB, right? There absolutely could be findings there, but they're not doing a whole lot of like on the ground like research to, like learn things that are, like the nature of what might have occurred and kind of the hearsay that is sort of coming up on both sides of an event like that. So the monitoring itself is very constrained and limited by those factors. And you do have full access, my understanding, to that information. So it is stuff that you can pursue, even though I completely understand the concern that it was not included and it wasn't continuous monitoring. So I just want to ground it in kind of the lens that we're talking about, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other public comment? I know this kind of evolved into a discussion of its own, but I just want to make sure we're getting any comments from members of the public who've joined us tonight. Anything else you want PCCEP to know about? Things that you've been hearing? Yeah, anything.
Go ahead,
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. This is Mark Porras, he, him pronouns with Portland Cop Watch. Yeah, I think that's a good point about the PSU time period and wanting to sort of be focused and in what PCCEP would be looking for. And there's probably 100 things that they could look for. But I would consider focusing on the fact that that month there was more use of force by PPB that's been reported. That's on the use of force dashboard. So use of force would be one thing, and the other is the focus intervention team. I think that may have been like their first big effort since they sort of got reformed after everybody. Not the focus intervention team. Is that what I'm talking about?
RRT?
Yeah, the rappers, my bad. Yeah, the rapid response team. The team that everybody quit from in 2021. So that the PSU protests, I believe that was the first time they were like really called out to do anything big. And I could be wrong. But there's many different things that you all could focus on. And I would highly, I'd love to see what I would love to see would be the city to say, look, these were like the first big protests since 2020. What can we learn from this? Like, why wouldn't the police bureau want to learn from what happened during those protests? That's all I got.
Go ahead, Sylvia.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys. This is the first time I've dropped in for one of your meetings, and I'm here because of the Trump's executive order. And I knew that was going to be coming. I'm just wanting Portland to be prepared for it, and to the point that we do not get any intervention from Washington, D.C. So I am a TAC member. I came here as a citizen, not representing TAC or NAMI Multnomah. I am a family member of NAMI Multnomah. So you guys are doing good work. I learned a lot today, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett?
Good evening. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr.
Oh, thank you. I'm for those who don't know me, and there probably are some people who don't, that I'm a longtime community member and a longtime advocate for reform in the police department. And I've been very concerned about all years and years, 10, 15, 30 years of allegations against the police department for which no kind of restraint ever seems to happen. I mean, DOJ came out with their, not the DOJ, but the organization that was monitoring the police that was putting in their reports, I forgot their name, kept coming up with that the police department was in compliance on this, compliance on that, compliance on this and that. And yet the police still keeps killing people. I mean, they kill people. There are people that are killed almost the same day that the monitoring body was saying that, oh, there's got all this compliance. I mean, there's a lot of things that police were not in compliance with that they did get in compliance with, but they were minor things. To me, the major thing is death. Unaccountable, that, you know, when they stop killing, then I'd say they're in compliance. Now, listen, I'm not saying this, laying this at your doorstep, not by any means. I'm saying this as a part of my endorsement that is entirely, absolutely important that you get codified. I mean, like, for instance, even with this executive order from the so-called president himself, even with that, if you did not exist, there would hardly be any voices or any respectable organizations, community-based especially, that would even be, you know, taking all of this into consideration. I mean, you know, who else will we come to? I mean, there's other groups, and sure, and all this and that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that is absolutely important for you to continue and to keep fighting for recognition and support, formal report by the city and with a board support, including budget and so forth. So I want to commend the group of people that are here tonight on very short notice. I mean, this executive committee came, as far as I know, just came bloom out of the clear blue. I was totally shocked when I found out that this executive order had come out. And I do notice that in section 3, item B specifically relates to the kind of work that you do and the court work that needs to be done. And it needs to continue because we have not, I mean, there's been a lot of progress, you know, mainly as a result of your efforts, but it's clear we are not done. City is not done. The city police union is not done. All of us are not done. I mean, especially on the fundamental things. So thank you. I want to congratulate you. I want to encourage you to continue doing the work you're doing. And even in the pressure of these current circumstances, continue to recruit additional members to your body. Every single one of you should be talking to at least one person to try to encourage and influence them to you know, to get involved. Just one. If each one of you brought in one more, that would be a tremendous help. So anyway, thank you. And I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm going off on a tirade, but these things are too serious to me, and it's too serious to Portland. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Burnett, your voice is greatly welcomed in the space.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Burnett.
Yeah, I think we agree with every single thing, or not we, but hopefully every single thing you said. And I think like you reminded me that the settlement agreement, it doesn't exist to end use of force. It exists to end use of force out of compliance with PPB policy. And so like there can be police killing people that will still be in compliance with the settlement agreement and in compliance with police policy, and
that's right.
Where this can't just end there, you know? And I think, yeah, that's just like a good reminder that the floor is like really very low, and we need to take these standards a lot higher and not see killing ever.
Yeah, and that's why I'm super encouraged by some of the budget considerations that we started out with, going towards alternative first responders and otherwise. I think the work that we do helps promote those alternatives. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
All right. We're a little bit over. This will be the last hand we take. Counselor Canal.
Just wanted to, maybe this is better if Christopher does it, but speaking of budget, since Kip mentioned it, I did want to point out that if you haven't looked at the PCEP lines in the mayor's proposed budget, I think that you will be fairly happy with it. And I wanted to, I've already said it to him privately, but I'll say it to his team here publicly to commend the mayor for finally getting that permanent, ongoing position for community engagement for PCEP into a mayor's proposed. It's been 3 years that I've been involved in that conversation, and this mayor did it. So still got to get approved and all that, but just wanted to commend him for that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I turn it back to you, Kip and Odelia, or no, Kip and Tia.
Tia, do you want to close this up?
Sure. Okay, is there a final slide? Otherwise,
Final slide. I got you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what is next? Next, we're having on May 14th, the Community Engagement Subcommittee meeting, 6 o'clock as usual. And so hopefully we'll see you there, and we appreciate everyone who came tonight. And really appreciate all your feedback and commitment and time. To learn more about PCEP, you can go to our website, portland.gov PCEP. You can also write public comment in advance to this website, tinyurl.com PCEP comment. Also sign up for our email updates at tinyurl.com PCEP updates. Again, thank you so much for your time tonight, and I will see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. This was a great conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Great discussion.